right, welcome back. We are just about to start our third talk of the afternoon and our second last one for today. Just before I introduce our next speakers, I just want to remind you that these are the last couple of hours for you to get involved in the competition that's happening. There are two ways you can win prizes today. One is by getting involved in this LinkedIn competition, take a picture of your favorite part of the festival, tag it online, tag Data Science Festival Company. There's the hashtag as well, DSF Oktoberfest. I forgot what the hashtag was earlier, but it's so obvious, isn't it, when you think about it? Of course, it's DSF Oktoberfest. So tag that, and then if your post is up with the tag of both the company and the hashtag, then you're in for a potential prize at 5 o'clock, which will be mentioned here. The other competition that's going on is if you've been in the beer garden area downstairs and you play a couple of games there, you might get a few raffle tickets. So that raffle winner will also be announced at 5 o'clock. Now, the catch for this is you have to be in this room at 5 o'clock when that prize gets mentioned for both competitions. Otherwise, someone else is going to get your prize. So there is an absolute interest in being here at 5 o'clock. So hang around till that time. Right, so up next we have Saima, Jayendra, and Becky from Mars Petcare. Please welcome them to the stage.
So, hi everyone, thanks for coming along today. We are from Mars Petcare, and today we're going to talk a bit about how we're using deep learning forecasting and image data to achieve our purpose, a better world for pets. So first we'll quickly introduce ourselves. So I'm Becky, and I'm a data scientist in the global data and analytics team at Mars Petcare. So as a team, we provide data science support across the whole of the pet care business. I graduated from the University of Manchester a couple of years ago with a master's degree in physics. And then I started my career in data science just over a year ago when I joined the team here at Mars. So since then, I've been able to work on a few different projects. I've had experience with some time series forecasting, some image classification, and most recently some causal inference. Over to Jay.
Thank you, Becky. Hi, everyone. I'm Jayendra, or Jay for short. I graduated from Queen Mary with a bachelor's degree in physics. Over the last 2 and a bit years, I joined Mars and the team as a graduate. In that time, I had the opportunity to do geospatial modeling, A/B testing, and some NLP work. And now I'll hand over to Saima to introduce herself.
Thank you, Jay. I'm Saima Rahman, a lead data scientist in Mars Petcare data and analytics team. My background is in maths. After graduating in King's College London in complex system modeling, I started my career in aviation. Then I moved over to the NHS, worked there for a couple of years in various data modeling projects to help NHS achieve their objectives. In 2017, I set up and led the first data science team in NHS Digital. And then in 2020, I joined Mars Petcare, mainly work with veterinary data to support Mars Petcare reach their objectives.
Cool. So first of all, could I get a raise of hands? Who here either grew up with a pet or currently owns one? Seems like nearly all of you. Great. So I think we can probably all agree that we only want the best for our pets, right? And this is really at the heart of everything we do in Mars Petcare. So throughout the session today, we're going to be talking a bit about how we're working towards this. You'll learn a little bit about Mars, and in particular Mars Petcare, the data that we have, and how we're using this to support both our pets and the business. We're going to share a forecasting tool that we've developed for our supply chain, and we're going to talk through a couple of innovation projects where we're making use of video and image data. So when most of you hear Mars, I imagine you probably think of the chocolate bar. And while it's true that that's where our foundations are in confectionery when we started in 1911, we've grown a lot since then. So we're now operational in over 80 countries, and we have a lot of brands, so you might recognize some of them on the screen. Now, before I started here, I knew about Mars. I'd obviously knew it was a big company, and I'd heard a lot of the big names. But I actually didn't realize the extent of the brands and the industries that we're involved in, because we do a lot. So Mars is made up of 4 segments. The one that will be most familiar to you is snacking. So this is where we have our chocolate, our snack bars, sweets, and chewing gum. So you can think Mars bar, Snickers, M&Ms, Wrigley's Extra. But there is more to Mars than chocolate. We also have Mars food. So you might recognize some of these as well. We've got the likes of Ben's Originals or Dormeo, for example. Then we've got Mars Edge. So this is Mars's newest segment, and this focuses on more science-based nutritional solutions to improve health. And then, of course, where we're from, and what we're going to be focused on today is Mars Petcare. So what I think a lot of people don't know about Mars Petcare is that, one, it exists, and two, it's actually the largest segment. So we account for over half of the net sales that Mars brings in. So what do we do in pet care? We work a lot in the veterinary care space. We have over 3,000 hospitals and 381 sites. We also have a number of billion-dollar pet food brands. So you might recognize these. We've got Pedigree, Whiskers, Caesar, and Royal Canin. So I've mentioned that Mars Petcare is the largest segment within a very large company. But what does that actually look like? So through our food, our products, and our care, we've served 425 million pets. Just a lot of animals. To be able to do this, to support our pets, their owners, and the businesses that provide for them, we have 100,000 associates, and we operate in 130 countries. Now, I've mentioned already our 3,000 hospitals. This is where we give direct care to our pets. So within this, we have a mixture of GP hospitals, we have some secondary care, and then tertiary care and more specialized hospitals. Then we have teams like ours. So we work in an office, and we have 104 office sites worldwide. And then, of course, we manufacture all of our food and products. So we have a number of factories as well. So you can see that our global footprint is pretty significant. But this is something that's been built over time. So on the left of this timeline, you probably see some of the familiar brands. But it's really through the last 8 or so years where we've diversified to include a lot more veterinary care and science-based brands. So you can pick out 2015 and 2016. This is when we acquired Blue Pearl and VCA. These are 2 major veterinary brands in the US. And then in 2018 is when we acquired Linnaeus. So this is our major veterinary care brand here in the UK. So for those of you that do have pets, your local vet may well be part of the Linnaeus group. So these more recent years is where we've really diversified. We've made that shift from pet food into pet care. Now, the acquisition of these businesses is not only great for Mars, but it's also really exciting from a data and analytics perspective. For us as data scientists, it means we now have access to a much broader array of data sources, and this creates a really rich data landscape for us to work with. So what data am I talking about? I think the diversity in our data sources is really reflected in the data itself. So some of these might be expected to you. We've got the relatively straightforward demographics, things like age, breed, sex, location. We also have a lot of additional data. And this is something I found quite interesting when I started here. The range of data sources that we have access to is much broader than I anticipated. For example, we can know about a pet's medical history or their activity, for example. And on the pet owner side, we can know about their previous pet ownership history and their previous experiences with pets. So each of these features really helps us to understand our pets and pet owner needs better. To give you a bit more detail on the actual data involved in this, when we say medical history, now this is what we get from our veterinary clinics. So this in itself is a really complex and vast data source. You think every pet has its own history of conditions, diseases, veterinary visits. With veterinary visits comes medical notes, so this can introduce natural language into our data. And we have other things under this as well, things like test results. So this could be blood tests, or it could be x-rays and scans. This introduces image data as well. So you can start to get an idea of just the complexity of the data that comes within medical history. One of our brands, Wisdom Panel, offers DNA testing service for pets. So from this, we can get access to genetic profiling data. Now, this helps us understand the conditions and disorders that are specific to every pet's unique genetic makeup. And this really allows us to customize our care. Then we've got nutrition. So just like humans, nutrition plays a huge part in every pet's life and health. And quite small changes can have really large impacts. When we understand how important this is on the individual level, it means we can start to understand the importance when we scale up, as we're also a manufacturing business. So there's a lot to understand in this space, from the science behind the foods to the supply chains that provide them. And we're going to dive into this a little bit more with one of our case studies today. Then the last one on this list is activity tracking. So this is possible through our Whistle devices. Now, I imagine a lot of you today are probably wearing some kind of smartwatch, fitness tracker. Got my Garmin on, for example. And for those of you that do wear them, you'll have an idea of the amount of data that these devices store. So for anyone unaware, they track your activity, they track your sleep, and they can pick up on patterns in your health and behaviour that might otherwise go unnoticed. So Whistle provides these same capabilities, but for our pets. And later on, we're going to share a way in which we're using this kind of data. So when we bring all of this together, we can start to build up a much more holistic view of our pets. As an example, I'd like to introduce Bella. So our Wisdom Panel tells us that Bella is 80% Chihuahua, 20% Pomeranian. And we also know she's a 3-year-old spayed female. She has regular vet visits, and she's up to date with her flea and tick prevention treatments. And at her most recent visit, she weighed 4.5 kilograms. And we know that this is a healthy weight for a dog of Bella's size. We also know from her medical history that she fractured her elbow when she was 6 months old. Now, something else we know about Bella is that she suffers from a specific condition, atopic dermatitis. This is a skin allergy, and it can cause excessive itching, scratching, it can lead to hair loss and infections. But it is a condition that can be managed, and a part of this management is through diet. So Bella actually uses one of our specialised Royal Canin products, a hypoallergenic food tailored to small dogs. So this is what we know about Bella, but when we take a step back and think to the many millions of pets that we serve, every one of them, just like Bella, has their own histories and unique set of needs. Being able to understand at this level of detail for each of our pets means that we can really help to inform our pet owners and help them to make better choices for their pets' care. It also helps us as a business understand how we can effectively deliver this at the scale that Mars operates at. We want to make sure that every Bella of the world that relies on our products and care for their health have access to them. So it's really important that we're getting the right products to the right places at the right times. For us, this is how we're helping to make advances in the pet care industry. By being able to bring all of this data together means that we can really support our pets and owners across all aspects of their lives. And that helps us to deliver on our purpose, a better world for pets. So I'm now going to hand over to Jay, and he's going to talk a bit more about these challenges of providing at scale and how we're using data science solutions to overcome them.
Thank you, Becky. Did you know that German Shepherds have sensitive stomachs? Or that Persian cats use the bottom side of their tongue to pick up kibble? Royal Canin, owned by Mars, is a premium pet food brand that specializes in tailored nutrition for dogs and cats based on breed, age, and health condition. The food that's made not only contains all the nutrients that a pet needs, but also helps them to manage their conditions. Now, Bella is not the only dog to suffer from atopic dermatitis. And you can imagine atopic dermatitis isn't the only condition a pet can suffer from. So as we scale this up to the multiple millions of pets, it's crucial that we measure and analyze demand accurately. Now, this became very apparent when COVID was at its peak, People changed their purchase route from both how often they were buying products to also where they were buying it from. And we had to successfully adapt to some of those challenges, from both keeping our associates safe to sourcing raw materials. Now, for those of you who aren't super familiar with supply chain, it's all about getting the right product to the right customer at the right place and at the right time. And COVID really challenged our ability to do this. On top of this, we saw a surge in pet ownership during COVID. And so our original measure of demand was also changing. So with all of those challenges, we had to shift the way we measured and analyzed demand. Now, here, we have 3 different products from Royal Canin. Royal Canin provides a variety of different pet products from more general categories, like medium adult dog food, to more niche categories, like Dalmatian pet food. So demand can really vary a lot depending on the products that we make. So for some products, like the ones in blue, we're producing much more than demand requires, so we're in a surplus. For others, we're matching demand exactly. And finally, we've got other products where we're producing less than demand requires, also known as a shortage. So we can actually begin to reallocate some of our surpluses towards addressing those shortages. And we do this by using machine learning and AI to help do demand forecasting. We supply our forecasts to demand planners who reallocate production so that they can be more agile and quick in addressing some of those shortages. We're still able to meet 100% fill rate for all the products that we're cutting back on while still reducing those shortages. So how did we do it? We did it with a time series forecasting framework called Deimos. Deimos leverages the latest and greatest in time series modeling to do finely tuned production quality modeling at scale. Deimos is actually an acronym. It stands for Deep Experimental Integrated Multivariate Optimized Series. It allows us to experiment with many things in time series modeling, process at scale, and push the best forecast to production. It supports a variety of models from ARIMA and tree-based models to Facebook's profit model, as well as more complex state-of-the-art models like LSTMs and transformers. Here's the Deimos pipeline. It all starts with our favorite part of a data science project, cleaning and preparing data. Then we move on to feature engineering. Here, Deimos will take our base set of features, clean them, and generate some more. So we now have a full menu of possible features. So now what? Which models do we actually pick? All of them? None of them? Some of them? Ultimately, we want the data to tell us what are good inputs for our model. So we introduce a novel technique called homodose for feature selection. It allows us to run many simulations and tell us the usefulness of the features that we're providing to our models. Then we move on to experimentation and automation of hyperparameter tuning and model selection at scale. And now, I mentioned model selection. Different models in time series require different criteria, and different use cases require different performance metrics. Say you care about being accurate for your day-to-day predictions, and they need to be within 10% of the true value. Or you might care about, say, in production planning, where your cumulative sum of units must be within 200 units of the true value. We built Deimos in such a way that it's a flexible tool which allows us to choose whichever loss function is most appropriate. We then move on to parameter tuning and experiments. The best model is then identified, predictions are calculated, and served. So now I'm going to go into this in a bit more detail. So first things first, cleaning the data. Our goal here is to make a data set any time series model can handle. We've got a variety of models, and we don't want to exclude a particular model family just because it has a hard time dealing with outliers, high variance, or missing values. So for each retailer product pair, we're going to attach missing dates. So these are dates where we have no orders. We're then going to impute missing values. So we do this through a variety of methods, whether that be forward fill, backfill, rolling average, or plain filling in zeros. In our case, we're just going to use a rolling average for imputation and smoothing. And all of this is automated and scaled thanks to PySpark for super fast cleaning and preparation. Next, we move on to the most important process, feature engineering. Now, we have 2 questions we like to ask in this step. The first being, is this feature predictable? And the second being, is this predictable feature contributing meaningfully to my model? So back to that first question, is our business feature predictable? Let's say we have a feature that we don't know the value of very far into the future. In our case, maybe number of new customers. We'll set a threshold for what we expect our minimum value to be for that feature. So let's say 10%. Now, I'm going to forecast those new customers, and I see that there's an 80% error when trying to predict that feature. So in this case, I'm just going to exclude that model, as I don't want it to dirty our model with poor exogenous features. Next, now that we have our set of predictable features, are they actually useful? Maybe I'm able to predict the number of corgis which have an Instagram account, but that's not going to be very useful in contributing to my model performance. So how do we do this in practice? This is where we introduce our step homodose. Homodose is a novel technique for using Monte Carlo simulation processes for feature importance in a time series setting. It allows us to determine if a feature is meaningful to model performance. So we simulate a number of combinations per feature as is reasonable. Then we'll treat that simulated value as any other feature in our model. We'll then train a model, collect feature importance scores, and then compare feature importance scores. We'll then use a t-test to compare those feature importance scores of the simulated feature, our random white noise feature, compared to our actual features. And we use this to determine whether a feature actually meaningfully contributes to our model. Through this process, we've seen some pretty overwhelming results with a 50% reduction in prediction error. So we finished data cleaning and the feature selection parts of our pipeline. We now move on to modeling. Which model should we choose? We have many choices, each with their own set of advantages and disadvantages. So I picked a couple to talk about. We could go with, say, a tree-based model, like a random forest regressor or a histogram gradient boosting model. These ensemble models are great at capturing complex nonlinear relationships between our exogenous features and the target variable. They can handle missing values, are less sensitive to outliers, but this isn't really an issue due to our data cleaning process. However, they have a tendency to overfit, and they're not good at capturing long-term or complex dependencies in our dataset. So instead, we could go with maybe Facebook's profit model. Facebook's profit model is an additive model that consists of 4 components: seasonality, trend, holidays, and a white noise error term. Profit is good at somewhat complex seasonalities and missing values. It's also really easy to incorporate a special events calendar. So let's say you have a promotional calendar full of marketing events planned up. It's really easy to plug and play that into this model. It's really easy to implement, and it fits very quickly. However, it can be sensitive to large outliers, and it has some strong assumptions about our data. In general, this model works quite well, but we've seen many examples where it produces the worst forecast out of all the forecasts we did. So we now have a variety of possible options for models, each with their own set of advantages and disadvantages. From more traditional models like Saramax and exponential smoothing, which can handle trend well, and they're easy to implement, to more complex state-of-the-art models that leverage deep learning like LSTMs and transformers, that can account for lots of attributes, but they're not the easiest to implement, and they're quite slow due to the complexity of the architecture. Now remember, we're trying to do this for the entire portfolio of Royal Canin regularly. So we want the best model as quickly as possible. So which model do we pick? We're going to pick everything. But to do that at scale, we have to use the tools available to us with Spark, MLflow, and a Bayesian hyperparameter tuning package called HyperOpt. MLflow is an open source platform for managing the machine learning lifecycle. It allows you to track experiments, package code into reproducible runs, and share and deploy models. HyperOpt is a great hyperparameter tuning and optimization package, and it integrates really well with Spark thanks to the Spark trials feature, and allows us to do super fast hyperparameter tuning and optimization. So by combining these tools, we're able to build lots of models quickly, register the best one, and deploy them. Now, to give you a sense of scale, we're not just doing this for a single time series. We're trying to do this across the entire portfolio for Royal Canin, across all of our customers. So we have 350 products we sell to Petco, but Petco is not our only retailer. We sell 275 to PetSmart, 175 to Amazon, 350 to Chewy, and over 650 to other retailers, mainly veterinary clinics. So that leaves us with about 1,800 product retailer pairs. But we don't stop there. For every single pair, we're going to run 8 model types listed here. And then for every single model type, we're going to log 10 Bayesian hyperparameter tuning runs. So we log every single model and hyperparameter tuning run to MLflow. And thanks to Spark, that's quite quick. But that leaves us with about 144,000 models to create demand forecasts. That's 144 possible options for forecasted demand for the entire portfolio of Royal Canin. So it's quite a lot of models. So we've trained our models, and we've got our best possible options. How do we pick the best one? So let's take this example of a random retailer product pair. We have our best model using the performance metrics from the test period, but this is still the best model per model family listed here, this rainbow of models, compared with the truth in black. Which color would you pick for the unknown future after black? I had red. Any other options? Maybe green? Maybe blue? I'm hearing some blues. So you have to kill the suspense. It's actually orange. Orange is the best model in this case. I'm sorry, person who said red. But honestly, any model could be a reasonable choice. Our method for choosing the best model is to choose a model which fits best closest with the observed sales patterns over the previous years. And we use a champion model selector to do this process. So we've picked our champion model. Now it's time to put it into production. Our models don't need to be served in real time, so we can simply update a forecast output table, freeze all previous forecasts, and update all future forecasts. So we built tons and tons of models. How long does this whole process take? So we built lots and lots of models. You saw 144,000, and we're forecasting this weekly. So obviously, it must take a lot of time. Well, thankfully, not too long. The whole process takes about 12 hours, give or take, and that's if we don't include more complex models like LSTMs and transformers, which take a little bit longer. So this is really an example of how we're using data science to support the business and help operational processes. But we're also trying to push the boundary of pet care. So now I'll hand over to Saima to help to show off a few innovation projects that use image and video data.
Thank you, Jay. So we saw an example of how Mars is using tabular data, deep learning using tabular data to support some of the economical and operational challenges that we face today. I'm going to share an example of how Mars is using deep learning, using its images, videos, as well as tabular data to support the many millions of pet parents and pets across the globe today. So the Pet Insight project is a research project using one of Mars's wearable devices, the whistle. Now, many of you who are pet owners may have seen, or perhaps you use a whistle device for your pet, which is an activity tracker that sits on the neck of the pet. Initially, the proposition was very much about tracking for lost pets, but over time, it became a bit like a Fitbit, an activity tracker for pets. The Pet Insight project is about a desire to see if we can create a smarter device that can additionally capture the health features of a pet. So we will use Luke as an example to understand the project in a little bit more detail. So here we have some information about Luke. Now, its vet will know that he's prone to an ear infection, and its owner will know that he won't go outside in winter without wearing his coat. And its whistle device will have some activity information about him. Now, this project is about connecting all of these data points about Luke to help him. Now, we need to understand that Luke cannot talk to us, so we have to find other ways to understand him to improve his welfare. So it's now really becoming more of a diagnostic tool for helping us understand the pet's health and identifying potential symptoms and risks that we can now tackle. So the project signed up a number of pet parents, and we find that pet parents are usually super keen to engage in this kind of research, because they're really keen to connect the data about their pets so they can understand their pets and that they can directly help their pets and that they can also help pet care generally. So this project was a collaborative effort between Mars's Banfield hospitals with the Whistle team and the Pet Insight project team. And the way it worked was the pet parents signed up to the project, they received their Whistle device, they shared their pets' medical records, and they also crowdsourced. So they provided videos of their pets with their sort of eating behaviour, sleeping, drinking, and everything else in between. The research team then began to tag behaviours in those videos. And through the tagging of the videos, we can start to interpret the data. Now, interpreting the data that comes from the gyroscope and the accelerometer within that device is actually quite complex because you don't really know what angle the device is on the pet's neck. You don't know if it's at the top of the neck or if it's at the bottom of the neck. You don't even know if the pet's moving forward or if it's moving backward. So where with our Fitbits today tell us how many steps we've done, it actually becomes quite tricky with quadrupedal animals. However, through the tagging of thousands and thousands of videos, we've been able to build a picture, and we can now understand the activity that a pet is doing, but also how vigorous the activity is, and that is helpful in many, many ways. So the combination of the thousands of videos, as well as the data captured from the whistle device, generated a lot of data. So we collected 20 billion minutes of data. 20 billion minutes of data then generated a lot of time series. So this became a complex time series analysis challenge. So the team had to create a new approach to classify what is happening with the pet in real time. FilterNet. FilterNet really allowed us to manage the amount of data that was being generated. FilterNet advances the state of art in all measured accuracy and speed metrics when applied to the benchmark data. If we focus on the left-hand side, where we see the drinking behaviour, we can see the time series are tightly packed, as opposed to the time series in the centre, where we see the eating behaviour. So the sensitivity in the time series really correspond to the different pet behaviour that we see. There is a paper published by the team on FilterNet, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but FilterNet allows us to create fast behavioural accurate predictions. There is also a real-world validation paper for those of you who are interested in the underlying detail. What the team did was build a robust algorithm that could understand these dogs, what the dog was doing in their day-to-day life, and that is extremely useful. I'll play a video shortly to bring the complexity and the sensitivity of time series, and also to demonstrate how Mars is using the model to interpret the pet's behaviour, and then what we do with that data to improve the welfare of our pets. So here we see a dog is eating and he is standing, and that is interpreted from the top left, the accelerometer data. Underneath that, we can see the head motion estimate, and at the bottom left, we see the behaviour probability. So the probability the dog is drinking, eating, scratching, licking, etc. And on the bottom right, we can see its posture probability. So the probability the dog is laying down, sitting, standing, jumping, etc. So when I play the video, you'll be able to see how the model picks up the probabilities and how the gyroscope, the time series, etc. changes. Here we see that the model has accurately predicted that the dog is eating and that he is standing. That is all interpreted from the accelerometer at the top. We can also see the head motion estimate is quite accurate. And now the model is predicting that the dog is licking. The dog seems to really be enjoying that food. He's licking that bowl clean. So now he's doing nothing, so we get a big bucket of none. The fact that the model can pick up the difference on whether the dog is eating or licking is quite remarkable. So the amount of level prediction that the model allows us is quite impressive. So now we can see at the bottom, it's predicting a bit of sniffing, a bit of chewing. So now we see a vigorous head shake, which the time series and the head motion both picked up. A head drop, rolling on the floor. Again, all behaviours that the model is accurately predicting. So this is just a few seconds of movement. And what we do for our pets that wear the whistle device is build that continuously for them so that we can understand our pets, like Luke, and what's specific to Luke and what's specific to our pets and how we can best support them. Now that allows us to do many, many things. And one of them is to identify the change in behaviour. So things that we might not perceive as the pet owner, and the pet owner's perception of what's normal for their behaviour can also be quite subjective. So we added these health features in the Whistle app to provide the pet owner with objective data about their pet. So how their scratching behaviour, how their itching behaviour changes on a daily basis. And they can also download a health report. So the pet owners would get a notification if there was a significant change in any of the behaviours. So if there was a significant change in the itching, then they'd be given a notification and they might want to see a vet about it. Also, if there's an increase in the drinking behaviour, which could be an early sign of an onset of diabetes, so they could seek the medical advice. And we know early intervention enables early prevention. So this is one way we can understand what our pets like Luke might want to tell us about their health. Now, when we combine these insights with the medical data, we can really see how their activity changes around, let's say, surgery or other procedures. So it enables us to understand how long it takes a pet to completely recover after a procedure. It also allows a vet to assess if the recovery is on track or not, or so they can take appropriate action to support the pet. So this is how Mars is using deep learning to understand the activity of its pets, to understand the enjoyment of food, as well as to create individualized health pathways and much more. Now, another example of where Mars is using deep learning is the Rapid Read project. As Becky mentioned earlier, Mars has over 3,000 hospitals. And one of the key sources of data generated from those hospitals is the extensive amount of images, including X-rays. So the Rapid Read project is all about applying deep learning to hundreds of thousands of images from these hospitals to support our diagnostic business and to support our pet professionals so they can focus on the most critical tasks. And also to provide a speedy response to our pet owners when it matters the most. Now, we know that our radiologists are under pressure to meet a growing demand for their service. So the goal of this project is to really use AI capability to interpret these images in this sort of image review process. And that could be simple things like capturing the identity of the pet, things like understanding where the X-ray took place, over to some more practical elements, like making sure that you're looking at the image from the right angle. Now, it may only take a few seconds to flip an X-ray over to look at it from the right angle, but our radiologists really appreciate not doing that again and again. And over to the most critical part, evaluating the actual image and identifying potential risk. The standalone diagnostic tool that we built at Mars Petcare can currently identify 53 findings in thorax and abdominal X-rays in both cats and dogs. Now, this is done in minutes, not days. And this is the speedy response that our pet parents really appreciate. And this guides our veterinarians on where to focus so they can spend their time on the most critical tasks. Now, there are many, many more examples of things that we are doing in Mars Petcare to solve the pain points and to support our pet professionals and pets. But these are sort of just some of the examples. Now, hopefully you have a better view of what Mars is, the type of data we collect, and how we're using that to generate value and improving the pet ownership experience of millions of pet parents globally. We saw Deimos, a supply chain forecasting tool, a forecasting tool to support our supply chain. We saw Pet Insight Project, an innovation from a tracking tool to a diagnostic tool to support the welfare of our pets. And we saw Rapid Read, the diagnostic tool to support our pet professionals. Now, if you'd like to know more about the work that we're doing in Mars Petcare, we're on stand 9. Please come and say hi to us. Well, thank you for listening to us, and we hope you enjoyed the talk.
Thank you very much. Right, we are going to take a quick 5 minutes just to change over to our next speaker, but I am going to share something with you. I've just been told that if you are a fan of beer, there is free draft beer from 4:45 to 5:45, so you might want to hang around for that. Just make sure you bring your little DSF cup down to the kegs, and you'll get that free beer. So I'd say take it, right? Right, see you all in about 5 minutes.